So yeah, obviously you probably know you're here to talk about and with the breeding team at Atlas. So we're going to be discussing a variety of topics, but really just looking under the hood of the Atlas breeding program. In terms of housekeeping, please keep yourself on mute. I think everyone's automatically muted. And I don't think it's actually even showing anyone's videos, but keep your video off, and especially if you're doing weird stuff. I've run a bunch of these webinars in a previous role, and I've seen some really weird stuff that you don't want to see. There should be a chat. I'm going to make sure the chat is open. And please put your questions and comments in the chat, and then we're going to get to a Q&A at the end of it. And then also, we will have a recording that will get sent out to everyone who registered. We'll probably also share that recording out on LinkedIn. So yeah, long story short, if you want to share this with other colleagues or friends, we'll make that easy for you. And as I mentioned, this is part of an ongoing series of webinars, really aimed at sharing knowledge with our community of growers and folks in the industry. So keep your eyes out for the next one in a few weeks. Okay, I'm gonna just really quick make sure that the chat is working. Yep, looks like it is. Hey Kish, nice to see you too. Um, and let's see, I'm gonna do. Okay, can someone else try in the chat and just make sure that everyone can see that? Because it's great to have, a super lively. Oh yeah, Andy, perfect. Cool. So it's great to have a lively chat, right? Like when Adam and Andy are talking about this stuff, if you have questions, throw them in there. Also, if you're like, I totally disagree, that's bullshit, or whatever. It's great to kind of have folks just be chatting in the background. So feel free to jump in the chat with reflections or ideas or kind of your own experiences. That's what makes this juicy. Um, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Andy to just give themselves a quick intro each. So, uh, Adam, let's start with you.
Hi, my name's Adam. I am the Chief Operating Officer and founder of Atlas Seed. I work with Andy to head up the breeding department and production, and that's where I get to spend most of my time. So I'm happy to be here with you guys and excited to kind of share our story and share some of the nitty gritty of the Atlas breeding program.
Great. Yeah, and I'm Andy Wright. I'm one of the breeders here at Atlas, or Director of Operations. And yeah, like Adam said, we work closely together to do all the breeding for Atlas Seeds program here, and excited to share some like behind the scenes with everyone.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be here with everyone. Looks like we've got a pretty solid turnout. So, yeah, let's just jump right into it. Adam, this question is kind of for you, but Andy, feel free to jump in anywhere. Tell me about the origin story of Atlas. I know yeah, I've known you guys for a long time. You were veggie growers for a really long time, and I know for a long time there was actually a lot of resistance to growing cannabis because of the stigma and the legal risk and all that. You got into growing cannabis for a while, and then this breeding company was born, and the seed production company. So tell me kind of the origin story.
Yeah, so along with my partner and brother Ryan, who's the CEO, we started growing organic vegetables in 2009. And in a vegetable program, you're able to get the seed that you want and that works for your conditions in your region. For example, we grew a lot of beets. So at first we grew the cheap variety beets, which is Detroit Dark Red. It's open pollinated. It's not a hybrid. And it's cheap and the beets are good enough, but the tops aren't that strong. And some of the beets have big caverns in them. Then we decided, oh, we want to go get red ace beets. So the red ace beets are 5 times as expensive, but they're way more uniform. And the tops are stronger and they work for bunching. So that's just one example of how in the vegetable world, you can get whatever you need for whatever your specific program is. And when we got over our stigma of growing cannabis and decided we were going to jump in feet first in the pool, we realized pretty quickly that diversity and quality and stability of seed did not exist in cannabis. And also simultaneously, we saw the power of the autoflower, which you can plant in succession, just like you can in a vegetable program. So if you need to harvest cabbage for a cabbage contract, you got to plant every week. The same thing can be true with the autoflower. And a lot of, the bigger and more solidified growers are out there planting in succession with autoflowers, our sort of I don't know if prophecy, but our vision is definitely actualized in the industry. So when we weren't able to find the genetics that we needed, we decided we were going to make them ourselves. So we went on a deep dive and a journey to learn about breeding, and to learn what it was going to take to develop the program and build the company. And we have done exactly that. From realizing we needed autoflower seed for our own program to now having what I think of as, if not the best, then some of the best autoflower genetics in the world. And in order to have a good autoflower program, you need good full-term genetics. So after a year of kind of playing around with stuff, learning, developing, we realized we needed that piece of the puzzle as well. So very quickly and pretty early on, we jumped into breeding photoperiod strains as well, which has aided greatly in the improvement of our auto program. So now I'll kind of cut it off there, but just to kind of summarize, or to bring it back, we breed autoflowers, we breed photoperiods, and we've got three different kind of buckets that seed fall into, which is autoflowers and full terms, and then the semi-full terms as well. And they are a cross between an auto and a photo. And then there's all the fun, exciting stuff too, that we're working on behind the scenes as well, like triploids and all that kind of good stuff. So, Andy, I'll let you jump in there, or Charlie, you can prod us some more.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
prod you along, and maybe Andy jump in on this, and then Adam, you can fill in more. What did like the breeding program in those early years look like? And then kind of what have you learned since then that has kind of shifted, maybe the strategy or the tools? Like take me through how the overall strategy of the breeding program has shifted through the years.
Yeah, so in the early years, like Adam was saying, the main focus was autoflower, and I think once you start breeding autoflower, like he kind of mentioned, was you realize the necessity to have good photoperiod genetics to build with. So as we expanded into that, we also found, as we're doing breeding and you're making selections in the field, I feel like as time goes on, the more you know, the more you know that you don't know. So we've kind of learned that, making different selections and things in the field, it can be complicated, and it's helpful to have as many tools as possible. So now at this point in our breeding program, we've brought in some marker assisted breeding tools. We're also testing for heterozygosity. And so these things, in conjunction with our ability to make selections in the field, have really improved our program.
Sweet. Let's dive
Yeah,
into
I,
this.
I've I, I
Oh,
have a few things to add real quick, Charlie.
yeah, go for it.
Just to kind of give you a peek into how we started. I think, how we started breeding in the seed company was similar with how we started, farming, which was a lot of gathering as many opinions from as many intelligent people as we could, and then doing a lot of trial and error. And Ryan and I have always, taken a scientific approach to everything we've done. Um, but I don't think our initial attempts were as firmly rooted in the science that we're using now as our foundation. So I think really quickly we realized we needed to tool up, and I think the main and most powerful thing we did was we hired one of the preeminent sort of PhD breeders in the industry, Ryan Lee, to literally work with us on a week by week basis for 6 months to help us develop a breeding program. And that was 6 years ago. And we have added with the marker assisted breeding and tweaked this and done and tweaked that. But more or less, what we're doing now is the same program we developed with him, which is very methodical. It's very science based, although there is an artistic component to breeding, which I'm excited to talk about later. And we've used that program, and we're still using that program. And now, finally, Inhale, we're really seeing the results of that patience and that consistency and that commitment to the methodology that we committed to and learned when we hired Ryan Lee. There's lots of other
Yeah.
things I could speak to, but I think that was probably number one.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Things have changed over time, but I'm really thankful that you guys reached out to Ryan and we talked to him in the very early years, because part of a requirement for breeding is doing it for a long time. Unfortunately, there's ways to speed it up, but it does take time to do it properly. And so I'm thankful that we had such good guidance in the beginning so that we didn't have to pivot and change our approach too much, because you're starting to see the results now that we've been doing this for quite a while.
Adam, you kept referencing kind of this program or this methodology that you guys developed with Ryan Lee without revealing too much of the special sauce. Like, what is that program? What is that methodology?
Well, it's selfing individual lines and then putting them out into, for us, the field, and selecting what we consider the winners based on our various criteria, picking multiple additional offspring, and selfing again, rinse and repeat. That's the photo period program. And the autos, I definitely don't want to get too much into that because there's a lot of special sauce. Is a very similar program. We are selfing and then rinse and repeat.
Cool. On the photo period stuff, how, you mentioned there's obviously a lot of different criteria that you guys are using to make those selections. Like, take us through that process of, like, okay, you've got those siblings out there, how do you choose which lines you want to continue? And how do you choose, oh, this one looks really sick, but no, this actually isn't good, like, breeding stock to continue on?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a distinction there. One is that which do we want to continue? That's one question. And the other is which selections do we want to choose to move forward? So were you asking both questions or just
Yeah, let's
one, or
do
do you
one
want
and then the other.
which lines we want to continue? They both are art and science, and this part really tickles me a lot. It's really exciting, and I really get juiced up about it. But which ones to continue are based on a variety of factors, including how much money is allotted to our department for the year, because we can't do everything, including which shows promise. If you see something that's really uniform or fairly uniform in an S1, some of the work has, quote unquote, I don't want to say already been done, or you got lucky, which happens sometimes. And instead of going to generation 10, you only have to go to generation 6. A unique terpene profile, some sort of other unique characteristics, such as a really low leaf mass, or a really early finishing time, or a really high potency, or a really high in a minor cannabinoid. So there might just be one really special thing about the plant that enough customers will want, that we deem to be important to move forward. So it really could be any number of factors that make us say yes, absolutely. And on the flip side, what would make us say no would be a lot of overlap with something that we're already progressed on fairly far, or a good number of generations. And we are really cautious about continuing to add diversity to the program. We do it, and we do it with joy and enthusiasm and excitement, but we're not casting this huge net anymore. The huge net has been cast, and we might look to add 1 to 5 photo period strains per year. Some years we might add none. Some years we might only add 3 or 4. That kind of depends on what comes across my desk, what someone wants to share with us, what we're enthusiastic about, or what we're missing in the program. So sorry for dominating there, and that only answered half the question. Andy, do you want to jump in there?
Well, yeah, I was going to say one thing that I'm really thankful for is that that I grew up in this area, and that we all grew up in this area, because we just happen to be in, like, the epicenter of cannabis and cannabis genetics. And so one thing we've done over the years, I feel like we've touched on most of the traditional varieties that you would come across, and self them, and looked at how they released pollen, and how uniform that S1 population is. And yeah, like Adam said, we're trying to have a diverse catalog. So we want to have a little bit of everything, but we also try to make sure we don't have any overlap in our IBLs, just because we are a small company, we're self-funded, we don't have unlimited resources. So, there have been moments where we have a few things, that have similar terpene profiles and maybe structure, and we have to make the hard decision of, cutting one of those, because we only need really one in each channel.
Mm-hmm. That's super helpful. Do you guys want to take on that kind of second question of not only, how do you choose which things to continue, but yeah, just diving into the actual selection process. I mean, you obviously named, there's like the obvious ones, right? Potency, terpene, sort of flower structure, overall gestalt, how it releases pollen. But I'm sure there's also a bunch of ones that like I'm less familiar with or people are less familiar with that are really important. So yeah, what's on your guys' checklist? And again, like it's clear that not every line, actually, it's impossible that every line would have everything, right? So maybe one line has just one or two things you're looking for. But yeah, just dive in and kind of yeah, illuminate that checklist a little bit more.
Yeah,
Well,
you of course. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
no, go for it, Andy.
Okay, I was just going to say, of course, you'd love to have a plant that checks every box, and that's obviously the goal. Is you're looking for plants that check as many boxes as possible. But we've really, come to find out that almost with certainty, you have to give up something. There has to be some negative trait to almost every variety that you're looking at. So you have to take the bad with the good. Um, and so, you're looking for all the basic things, like you said. Uniformity is a big one for us. We're trying to replace clone culture with seed. We see seed, replacing clones, and we'll get into that later of all the benefits of that and why we're working towards that. So, uniformity is a big one that we look at. You obviously look for vigor. Vigor can get tricky because as we're inbreeding these plants, you're going to have some inbreeding depression that's occurring. So that's something that we kind of learned as breeders over the years is, you have to be careful selecting for vigor because that could be a sign that a plant's not as inbred as you think it is, especially
And
if
you
you
get
have.
vigor back when you create the F1 cross between the two parents as well. But you're speaking about that really nicely, Andy. Thanks for illuminating that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing to talk about because, when you first get into breeding, you just want these big, strong plants. Ooh, this one looks special and nice. But as you inbreed them more and more, and that's part of why we brought in LeafWorks to do heterozygosity testing, is it just helps us give that's something that's hard to visualize is how inbred the plant is. You can't tell just by looking at it. So it's nice to have the extra data set. We're also looking for disease resistance. Luckily, in our home field, we have a lot of humidity and fog that comes in, and so we're able to select against septoria and fusarium and different pathogens and things. And we're also just looking for things that are unique too.
Yeah.
So.
And so like the way the selection process works, or originally the way it started was just with a real emphasis on potency and really wanting to make sure we just captured the individuals with the highest potency. And that was a pretty science-based approach. Obviously, you're not taking anything ugly or anything with weird leaf morphology. You can easily eliminate those phenotypes. And we still do that, obviously. But the way it's become kind of an art form is that we've got with the inclusion of the marker-assisted breeding, we're still taking, samples for potency. Now we're also taking terpene samples. And we've also got other criteria, with leaf mass, with vigor, with how similar it is to the rest of the population, with
Washing metrics.
washing metrics. So it's like what right now, part of what we're doing is actually eliminating ones that obviously won't. And usually 50% of the population will just kind of eliminate itself through our criteria. And then you look through the other 50%, like, oh, the potency, we won't take anything with potency below, say, 22%. That's just an example. It depends on the line. Sometimes it's higher. And we won't take anything with less than 2.5% terpenes or whatever it is we've set out there for the line. And then we've got to kind of look at it on a spreadsheet, go back out there, you look at the plant, you look at your spreadsheet, and then you've got to take enough selections where if one of them dies in the process of bringing it in, that you have backups. So that's the really juicy and exciting stuff to me. And I think what really sets us apart is we're really doing that work. We're spending the money and the time, and we have the passion to do this the right way that's going to net our cultivators and our customers the absolute best possible genetics.
And I'm really excited about that because when we first got into breeding, I assumed that most of the larger companies were doing it this way. This is just traditional plant breeding. It's not something special necessarily. And as time has gone on, I've I've noticed that there's fewer people actually doing, inbreeding,
Yeah.
creating IBLs to create true F1 hybrids. F1 hybrid gets thrown around a lot just because,
It
you can
sounds
argue,
nice.
yeah, it sounds nice, it's good marketing, and things are technically F1s to a degree if you're just, crossing them. But a true F1 hybrid made with IBL parents that are stable is a totally different product. And I've just been so surprised that people are not investing in that now. There is going to be a moment where the marketplace is going to shift and mature, and just like every other crop that's grown, the seed is going to be more valuable and more effective. And if people that have a large budget right now because they have a good brand, or they have some hype behind them, if they're not investing that in creating IBLs, there's going to be a moment where they probably regret it, I would assume, because this takes a long time. We've been doing this. I think we're on year 7 now, or 7 or 8, and
Yeah.
we're just now starting to see these solid, stable IBLs come, into our program. And when they figure out that they need those, they'll have to start from scratch, and you'll be way behind the marketplace. So I'm glad that we're doing this work. I'm happy and proud of it, and yeah, happy to share it.
Epic answers. I've got a few different like lines of curiosity here. One is, well, tell me, let's explore this, right? I assume one of the main reasons why people aren't making IBLs is they kind of run the numbers and they look at like, okay, if I was going to do this in a greenhouse facility that I have to rent or an indoor, this is going to cost me like millions, millions, millions of dollars. And, I know that Atlas has spent millions of dollars on this kind of stuff, but tell me about like one of the things that I've always loved about the farm and Atlas and just kind of the culture around that, Ryan and Adam have created is doing things really well, but kind of doing them a bit scrappy and like figuring out ways to do them without just completely blowing the budget up. So yeah, take me through how you guys have pulled off creating these IBLs without taking on, a bunch of investors' money or without, having the support of like a multinational seed company. Because it is a big undertaking.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's part of the problem. I think a lot of these like hype companies have, um, built a great brand and had some great successes with just crossing things that are popular in the marketplace. And then they have a large enough budget to where they're running it can get expensive to run things properly and clean and have lab setting. And then you start looking into making IBLs. And if you just pencil it out on paper, I think most people, especially if you're, self-funded, are going to say, how can you even afford that? How can I afford to spend 8 years developing IBLs to bring to market? So I think maybe, one of the things that might have helped us is we just jumped in and just made it happen. I also think there's like part of, like, at least for me, coming from like a background of growing in the early like Prop 215 days, where you build a grow room in your garage with spare parts, and I become an electrician and a plumber and a contractor and all these things I don't know how to do, but you just do it because you see an opportunity. I think that's really helped us. Like, you can just envision any space as a breeding space. And so we've been able to just kind of expand there and get what we need, and build these spaces to, pollination rooms and things of that sort.
I'm happy to be specific on a lot of friends, but I'm going to stay very vague here, and just say that that's like part of Ryan and my and Andy's superpower is just making something like this work professionally at a really high level, but without sort of all the noise. Um,
Perfect. Yeah, I think it takes creativity, So
yeah,
I'll tip my hat to you guys on that for sure. It's a serious undertaking and it takes creativity to be able to pull it off while also managing a commercial cannabis farm and a commercial veggie farm, and you guys got a lot of balls in the air. So, um, cool. The other one I wanted to pull on this is a fun thread is talk to me a little bit more. Maybe Adam start us off, and then we'll go to Andy the art and the science, right? Like you're obviously gathering so much data and there's this whole matrix of data and there's a real scientific approach that you have. But also on the other side, there's kind of this like plant whisper vibe that I think good breeding has. And you're in Sebastopol. That's what it was the home of Luther Burbank, who was one of the most prolific and well-known breeders, of his time. Like he was on the cover of Time magazine and stuff. He was super famous. People loved him. And he was a total plant whisperer. He said that like the plants would talk to him and they would kind of almost guide him towards which selections to make. So yeah,
Yeah.
take me through kind of the balance of the science and the art.
Yeah, I think I touched on it in one of my previous responses, and it's really taking the science and all the resources in terms of information that we have, and then balancing it with an intuitive component, which Luther Burbank used a lot, and you alluded to him using that in his breeding, and and using all that information, using your intuition, and using your eyes, your nose, all of your senses, and combining those kind of three components into making decisions. And like I said before, that is one of my favorite parts of my role, is getting to straddle those and thread the needle there. And I get to do it with Andy, and it's a super fun time of year. There's like 4 weeks that we just kind of get to go nuts. And I look forward to it every year. So
Do you guys ever find yourself, and then I'll let Andy jump in, but do you guys ever find yourself in like decision paralysis where you're just like, oh, like all the matrix is pointing this way, but I'm feeling this way? Or is it most of the time pretty clear?
never, I would say I never feel in that process, not even a little bit. It's like sometimes you just, the plant that you want is obviously gonna die, so you don't have the choice. The choice is always very clear. And whenever there's a little bit of indecision, it's indecision on a lower level, not on a higher level.
Mm-hmm. Andy?
Yeah, and we've definitely learned that, we would love if there was an approach to this that you could just be completely data driven. I think we love doing testing. We love getting things, if you could just completely take the intuition or the guesswork out of it, maybe you would feel more certain, right? That like if you could just have a computer tell you which one's best. And there's approaches like single seed descent that we've looked into, right, where you can go extremely fast and you can, use testing to help guide you. And there's a place for that. But I'm really proud that we're able to kind of blend the two with all of our testing and then get out in the field. And, you could argue maybe our approach can be a little bit slower at times, but I think the results are starting to show themselves. And I really, like Adam said, I really enjoy those moments we have out in the field, just walking through those plants. And the plants really do speak to you. I think, like you mentioned, Luther Burbank in this area, I think this area just kind of has plant speakers just kind of by nature. It's just built into this region. If you go walk through Luther Burbank's, the small properties that are still available to walk through, you can just feel the energy. And I think that expands out to everyone that lives here, as long as you're open to it. So walking those field, here in Sebastopol, it's special that we're able to make those selections in the field and then use that data to help, fine tune our decisions. But yeah, it's usually pretty clear. But we do make a few selections because, you go into the next generation and sometimes something pops up and you'd be disappointed if you didn't have another pathway to take.
Mm-hmm.
You can never know exactly what's right around the corner. So those things happen, and then we just have a different road to take, and we don't have to start back a different, a year behind.
What was the thing you mentioned? The single seed descent? What is that? I haven't heard of that.
Single seed descent, just just to overly summarize it, it allows you to basically grow out a population of seeds and make a single selection early on, and use marker assisted breeding, so you don't even necessarily have to take the plant all the way through like we are. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of, the more we looked at doing that, it felt a little too blind to us, at least for, the traits that we're breeding for. And we've made so much progress with our current program that we're doing, it just didn't feel necessary at the moment. I think if we were really restricted on space, if we didn't have this beautiful R&D field to look through thousands of plants each year, and we had to be restricted to a small lab space, that would make a lot of sense for us, because you can do a lot of work in a small, square footage area.
Awesome.
The type of breeding we're doing is called pedigree selection and single seed, and we're actually visually looking at the plants every year, and the visual component is part of our selection process. The science or the informatics doesn't tell the whole picture. It only tells part of it, a meaningful, substantial part of it, but not the whole picture. So with single seed descent, you're doing blind selection. So while you may be able to take a leaf cutting and send it in and make your selection before the plant has even flowered, while it's in veg, you can miss things really easily, such as crinkle, different leaf deformities. It can be hard to use the marker assisted stuff, in my opinion, to accurately predict terpenes. And the way the terpenes might change in the dryer, just the human aspect of it. So I think single seed descent has its place, and we've hemmed and hawed about using it or doing side by side, but we just didn't feel like it was appropriate for our breeding goals. So
I also want to mention that I think single seed descent has more applications in crops that have had more breeding time, where there's more clear markers that have been uncovered. And therefore, a lot of these things can be captured in marker assisted, just looking at the DNA of the plant. Unfortunately, since cannabis has been illegal for so long and this work has been delayed, a lot of the markers are just starting to be uncovered and verified. And so without a full set of things that you can look at in that setting, like Adam said, it's very likely you could miss something like crinkle and get all the way to the last generation. And now you have an IBL that has a major defect or flaw.
Yeah. We're still really in the early days, especially on the breeding side of cannabis. That's the other thing I always think about is just how much time and work, land grant universities have put into things like how to how to set up your field, like what's the best production style for tomatoes or corn or whatever. There's just been so much, hundreds of years of research on these different crops, and now finally maybe a little bit of it is happening in cannabis. But yeah, I guess kind of segueing on that or dovetailing in terms of production methodologies, right? Those have changed a lot, even since, I started growing, whatever, 15 years ago or something. It's the industry has just shifted so much, away from, bags way up on the hill or under these greenhouses to now more and more, we're seeing really large production at scale in the field. So take me through kind of seeds and clones. We talked about this, your guys' vision that seeds would eventually kind of supplant or replace clonal production, especially in outdoor field production. Where do you think we're at on that? And is that still the vision? Have you seen that come into fruition?
do you want to go, Andy?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing here is when you look at most crops, they're grown from seed, and seed is just way more scalable, much more affordable. There's pros and cons to both. Of course, clones are identical, so there's all sorts of benefits, especially what you're producing for, like having the plant be identical could be critical. Unfortunately, clones come with a lot of drawbacks, as we all know. They're just a lot more expensive to produce. And then it's easier to transfer pathogens and diseases. And so if seed is as uniform as clones, then there's not much of an application for clones. And you get all these benefits along with it.
How close do you think we are to seeing that? I mean, I know there's some other companies out there doing it with some really uniform lines. I know the Atlas is like pretty dang close, but yeah, where are we at and how close are we to seeing that?
We're seeing great uniformity. I mean, especially once you have true IBLs, in the 8th, 9th, or 10th generation, where these parents are stable, the seed is extremely uniform. And so in an application like that, it's hard to argue for clones. Sometimes I think there'll always be these amazing plants that just kind of pop up and you want to preserve them and capture them in clone form. So I think clones will kind of always have a place here and there in the industry, but as things mature, as more people have these stable IBLs, you're just going to see seed deployed. It's just much more effective. Also, the resulting plant from a seed is always way more vigorous. The clones don't have a taproot. If you put them side by side, the same plant and seed form versus its clone alternative in the field, anybody would be able to tell the difference right away on which one's more vigorous.
Yeah, I mean, when we have federal legalization, we're going to see a big, explosion in the industry, and a lot of that growth is going to be in flowers for extraction. And so, flowers for extraction need to be produced at the lowest possible price, and seed's going to be it. So, just to kind of echo what Andy said, there's always going to be a place for clones. I think it's going to be in indoor situations and some greenhouses for top shelf flower, AAA flower, whatever you want to call it. But the growth and the bulk of the growth in the industry is going to be in extraction, and that's going to come from seed. So, are we seeing it? I think there's a lot of hemming and hawing that goes on behind the scenes. People have had bad experiences with seed, or they think they need clones for a reason when they don't actually. Um, and I think the conversion has happened at a steady pace. But I am excited for the explosion and for just a mass adoption across the industry without the hemming and hawing.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier Ryan Lee, and just how influential and helpful he was. I'm sure that you guys have also had other kind of mentors and folks that you've worked with that have really influenced your understanding of, how to create a good breeding program, but also your understanding of the importance of different markers, whether it's terpenes or marker assisted breeding, whatever. Talk about some of those other mentors. And Andy, maybe I'll throw this one to you.
Yeah, Ryan Lee gave us a ton of information. It was great working with him. Always happy to hear what he has to say. Follow along when he's speaking online. Also, Jesse from BioVortex has given us a ton of information, and he shared some genetics with us. And he has beautiful plants, really special terpenes. I really admire his work and the way that he kind of connects with the plant. Is everyone tends to love his varieties. And then Reggie from Canna Country is a good friend of ours, and Reggie has this ability I've never seen anybody have. Like he could just look at a plant, he knows exactly where the genetics came from a lot of times. And we could do that too, if there's Blue Dream or Sour Diesel, but he's able to pull that out, like the most abstract genetics from our field without any prompting. And just a lot of his varieties are really special too. They have the number 26 that everybody admires. Beautiful plant, beautiful smell. Those are some of the people that I admire and, I've looked up to.
Awesome. Adam, you got anyone you want to add?
Well, Andy, do you mention LeafWorks right there?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so LeafWorks has been a great partner. The gals and their team over there have been awesome to work with. Trying to think, yeah, Reggie. I think you covered it. There's lots of people who've been supportive on our journey. I think those are the biggest ones and the ones most recently.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's see what else we got here. So yeah, we talked a lot about kind of where Atlas came from and kind of where we're at now. Tell me about like what's coming down the pipe. I know, on the sales side, there's been a lot of excitement about this collaboration with Raw Garden. So Adam, maybe you want to talk about that. But yeah, take me through kind of the new stuff that we're releasing this year and that we'll be releasing in the next year and the next seasons.
Yeah, I mean, we met with Adam Criswell and his team there at CCA, and he's kind of a year or two ahead of us. Super talented breeder. He's got more lines of autoflower that are a generation or two ahead of ours. So we licensed a few their parental lines, their IBLs, some of which we cross their IBLs, like the whole cross is theirs, and some of which is half theirs and half ours. And we're excited to to release those this year out into the public. I think there'll be more of that in the future because there's just a lot of synergy between us. Um, that's one specific collaboration. In terms of what we've got specifically going on in our program, we've got a ton that is either unreleased or has only been released in a certain form. The Green Jolly Rancher, um, which is one I'm really excited about for the for the terpenes. It's super unique, super consistent. Andy, do we? I think we only have it available for retail because we haven't gotten it into a form that's stable enough or consistent enough for commercial cultivators. That's
Yeah.
that's a specific kind of project that I'm really excited about. And there's more of that kind of stuff. I don't actually want to talk too much about it. That would just be one example that pops right into my mind. I think you guys just have to wait for the surprises and
Perfect.
for the stuff we've been working on for years. But I feel like our autoflower program kind of overall is in a really stable place, and the amount of changes that y'all should expect to see um, are like 25% at the most year to year. Like the program's solid. It's good. We've got a ton of diversity. I'm really happy with it. And we'll continue to tinker with it, but that's just it. It's tinkering.
Yeah.
The photo period, I think, is about to our photo period program is about to have its moment. We have, 10 to 12 flagship hybrids on the photo period sides, full term or full term and semi full term is the nomenclature we use. But I'm not necessarily thrilled with it on all fronts. I think there's a massive improvement coming in the next 2 years that everyone's going to be able to see. I mean, our customers keep coming back to us, so they're happy with what they're getting. But as a breeder who's really critical of their work and also a commercial cultivator, I know what I want it to be. And on the whole, we've got to take a step up. And I can see it all coalescing in the background. And we're doing the work and making these selections and using the science to leverage into these decisions. But I'm really excited for, let's say, 2028, and how at that point I'll probably be saying what I'm saying about the autoflower program is like it's basically done, and we'll tinker with it and you'll see changes each year. But I think between now and 2028, we're going to see big changes in the program.
Sweet.
Definitely, yeah. With our photo periods, it's been exciting to watch. It takes a long time to get these lines to stabilize, and some take longer than others. And so I think what we're starting to see now is each year we go through all of our IBLs in their latest generation, and one by one they start to kind of click and kind of fall in order. And it's really interesting to watch. And yeah, like Adam mentioned, especially over the next 2 years or so, I think we're just going to see a good portion of them kind of fall in line.
Mhm.
And I'm really looking forward to it because along the way, we're doing test crosses of those parent lines to figure out which ones match up the best, and for the potential F1 hybrid that's going to be the result once they're stabilized. And yeah, it's taken a while to get here, but we're now finally seeing some true IBL lines that are going to be really exciting to deploy into the seed.
Awesome. Let's talk about the raw garden, just the autoflowers there. I know, I guess they're super autos, right? They're like, or what we're calling, they're 85-day autos. You wouldn't call those super autos, Adam? I'm seeing.
No, I don't want to introduce other nomenclature into the situation. They're just a longer flowering auto that take
Mhm.
about 10 days more than ours.
Got it. And
People get confused with super autos.
yeah, do you feel like that's kind of where, I mean, I've seen just like such an improvement in the auto program from Atlas over the past 4 or 5 years. Actually, here, this is a great moment. We can pull in a question from the crowd. So this is from Colin in Minnesota. He says, I've been growing your autos for 6+ years, back when you just had CBD autos available nationwide. And at the time, he was a researcher at the University of Minnesota. He's watched the quality and the vigor improve every year by leaps and bounds, far faster than I would expect based on my experience with other crops. What unleashed the floodgate? The 2018 Farm Bill?
I think just we've really leaned into the breeding program, so we've just been doing more work than ever. And I think the autoflowers also finally like we were kind of alluding to, like finally got them inbred enough to where we were seeing solid results in the resulting crosses. It takes year after year, we have to continue to inbreed them. So the first few years, they're not as stable, obviously. And now we're starting to see really stable lines out in the field. And that's just making a big difference in the resulting seed.
Anything else on that, Adam?
Yeah, I think just a commitment to process. You get going with a business, a program, and you start it, and then you either keep going with it or you stop. And we decided to keep going and really dug in. And yeah, there was lots of synergies and um, things, external influences that helped. But I think it was us more than anything and our commitment.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of ups and downs in the industry, and I'm sure there's been many moments where you guys have been like, "Oh man, is this even worth kind of continuing this program on?" Given I mean, it's just as an industry, the landscape is so rocky and constantly changing, right? Like we could have a whole conversation about the new kind of policy change on a federal level. We're not going to get into that. But tell me about like, yeah, how when things are rocky and difficult, kind of where do you find the passion or the perseverance to like keep the program going? Is it just that like dedication to the vision that you have in your head in terms of like where, what this could unlock?
Yeah. I think it's just sort of we're playing the long game here. So when you get rocked by stuff or unsettled, you just have to step back and say, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? And has my conviction changed?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have stuff not work, just straight up not work, and that can be really frustrating because there's time and money and life energy that goes into it. But that's just part of breeding or any business. And so you have to be able to let that go. And then you've got shifting sort of regulatory stuff that's going on all the time. And it's sort of I think our personality, Ryan and I's personality works well to handle, manage, deal with a business like this. We're just like pretty stable guys who can kind of just take it.
Just take it on the chin over and over.
Yeah, it definitely introduces like more complexity into a breeding program, right? If you're dealing with corn, there's not all these legal hurdles to jump through to make sure that you're following all the regulations. And like you mentioned, with cannabis, especially nowadays, those things are constantly changing. And one small change can throw a huge kink in just like what was your day-to-day process. I also try to just embrace that because I feel like all of these hurdles make it difficult to operate in. That might make it difficult for other people to do it. And so there's maybe a value in continuing to just deal with the headaches and push forward because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And other people are going to give up and maybe not want to deal with it. But I think it's definitely worth it. And right now is kind of like the golden age to do these things. Other crops have been worked. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it'd still be exciting to breed all sorts of other crops. But this one to me is extra exciting because there's so much work to be done and so many things to accomplish that it almost feels like low-hanging fruit, even though that's not the way to it's not easy to do these things. But there's a lot of stuff that can be done, and it can be done right now. So yeah, you just have to deal with the hurdles as they come up one by one, and there's always a path forward.
Love it. What's a question that you wished I asked you? Yeah, what's one thing that I haven't asked you that you think I probably should have?
Good question.
And what's your favorite strain?
yeah. What do you like smoking? Yeah, what's your favorite strain? Both of you guys.
I really like our Banana Kush line. It's just like big, juicy purple buds, totally banana. You can get two different banana smells from it. You can get like just standard banana peel or this like artificial banana runts, like the banana runts candy smell. So there's like these two really interesting pathways, but just total banana. And it has these big juicy buds that typically would almost meet my threshold of being dangerous because I just start thinking of mold. But for some reason, the bud structure doesn't just completely turn into botrytis and rot out. So large buds are kind of exciting if they don't have problems along with them.
Yep. Adam?
I really like the Mendo Fatso.
Yeah.
It's super high potency. The flower's absolutely gorgeous. It finishes early. It's got good mold resistance. It's just really sexy. I don't know how else to say it.
Love it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Cool. Well, I'll throw it out to the crowd one last time. I don't think I see any more questions coming in here. So yeah, I'll give anyone who is still here with us and wants to ask a question, throw it in. Um, all right. We've got Janice from Latvia here. First of all, thanks for the great work and love that you put into the breeding and the business ethics that you stick with. I grow the Slurpicane in full outdoor for 3 years, and it's my favorite strain till now. What's your recommendations of another strain? Well, thanks for joining all the way from Latvia. That's awesome. So yeah, other similar ones to Slurpicane. What's the parent lines on Slurpicane again? I can pull it up.
Purple Punch and Fatso 84.
I'll make a plug. I'm not the breeder, so I really shouldn't be making plugs here, but I'm the sales guy. No, I love the Tangerine Punch. If you like Purple Punch, I think that the Banjo has a really unique terpene profile that's I haven't found. It just has a very sweet, intimate place in my heart because I saw the Banjo be birthed and then stewarded it in its early infancy through the ICU, and single-handedly I almost lost the Banjo like 5 different times. So yeah, I got a sweet some love for that plant.
Nice.
How about you guys?
I was gonna say the Paya Candy is great. So they're semi full term.
Yeah, that's another like fruit forward semi full term. We really like semi full term, so most of our semi full terms would be a good like transition for if you liked one of them to the others, because we're really looking. They're all going to finish early, but we're looking for semi full terms that have really good terpene profiles.
Yeah, Ice Sangria or Gorilla Guava would be the 2 others I'd throw in there.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, we got a juicy question. We got a couple of juicy questions. This is good. The crowd's starting to activate. Okay, so this is from Dan. He says, "How do you address inadvertent selection for monoecious habits, herms, when using growth regulators to induce male flowers?" That might be a little bit too deep in the secret sauce, but
no, it's not. It's not, because we aren't using the flower suppression formula we use on our selections. Those are only used on the parents. So the offspring, it's not used on, and that doesn't fully answer your question. But to fully answer your question would be that hasn't been an issue. That's not something that's come up.
There's one thing I'd like to mention too that is a little nuanced, but we have seen some sort of different appearance to a true herm, or sometimes you get a male, in a very small percentage, even on feminized seed. But males or true herms, the way that they develop the structure of their flower will look sometimes very different from a plant that has been sprayed with STS and induced. So every so often that you will see this plant that just looks weird, the kind of the way that the flowers, mainly coming from like the armpit at the nodes, or extra long anthers, and those plants are cold. Even if there's any question, you cold those plants. But like Adam said, you're also looking at tons of these plants that haven't been treated, and you're able to address it there. And yeah, breeding away
our crew goes through and looks at every single plant at 4 different touch points throughout the season, and anything that has intersex traits, which they do, absolutely they do. Any breeder who's telling you they don't would be lying to you. Gets marked, and those are just automatically eliminated from the selection process.
Yeah, it's helpful since we're actually, we're growers as well. We're producing for flower in the field, so we cannot allow for there to be any herm activity that would potentially pollinate the field. So just from like a production standpoint, we're spending a good amount of labor in looking at each plant by plant in detail. Luckily, we have a good crew too. Everybody's worked here for quite a while now, so everybody knows what to look for and is pretty dialed in.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Dan. It's a good one. It's funny too how, speaking of like the crew and their ability, like I feel like our crew's gotten better and better to the point where like it's not that they can smell them, but you can just kind of tell like there's something off about that plant. It's even like
Yeah.
as you're walking up to it, you just be like, I don't know, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And then you look,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
there it
really
is.
amazing.
Yeah, they just have a weird energy. Cool. We got a question from Matthew. I've grown a number of your autoflowers over the years. Great work. Are you able to preserve parental autoflower lines or selections in TC or revegging? I've heard this is possible, but have not seen it in practice.
So yeah,
Yes, it's possible, and no, we don't do it.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I personally believe the autoflower is not necessarily performing at the level of photoperiod varieties. It's just it's more difficult to work, right? Since you can't go out and find that special plant and take a cutting or re-veg it or hold it in a library. So it's yeah, we've definitely heard it's possible. And I think it is possible. I don't think the plant really wants to be pushed into that. So
No, it's really expensive, and I haven't really seen like a really clear reason to do it. I mean, I've seen kind of modest successes, but I was like, that wasn't worth it. Was my
like if you can
take.
preserve an autoflower in veg, but the plant is so stressed out during that process that it barely can thrive, or maybe won't be able to produce pollen or seed, then it's not even helpful. But yeah, it's
definitely
not something we're currently doing.
Yeah, pushing the plant into something that it doesn't want to do. Those autoflowers, they want to flower. That's their job. Sweet. Well, we're coming up at the top of the hour. I just want to thank everyone who joined us here. As I said in the beginning, we'll send out a recording of this. We'll probably throw it on LinkedIn. And we will have more webinars in the future. I don't know what our next one is, but I think it'll be like in the next 3 weeks or so. That'll be my job to figure that out and dial it in. But yeah, thank you all so much. Andy and Adam, thank you guys for your time and for giving us a good peek underneath the hood. Any last comments from either of you guys before we let everyone go?
No. Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, that was great.
Absolutely. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, guys.
All right. See you later.
Bye.